Welcome to the Sheffield Sunday as Bill Sees It meeting. Today it is with great pleasure and much gratitude that we welcome John C. from Ontario, who's come to share for about 60 minutes, after which we'll open up for general sharing, or if you'd like to ask John a question. And this week is week 2 of John's Expanding God Consciousness workshop. John, thank you so much for being with us today, and the floor is yours.
Thank you, Sky. I appreciate the welcome and the invitation for being here. So, friends, good morning, good morning, good morning. I'm in Canada, so it's still morning, afternoon in the UK, and it's a glorious day here, and hopefully you're having the same experience as I am having. Just to give you a brief background, I've been in AA for over 51 years, so I've had some distance from my last drink, and I'm happy to say that this journey that I've been on, I couldn't imagine at the age of 23, but me still being here, involved in the program, but here I am. And in many ways, probably more excited today than I was back 50 odd years ago. I was so preoccupied with my illness, my disorder, that I really couldn't enjoy what was in front of me. And what I hope to give you today is the idea that we can live in another dimension, a boundless dimension that is only restricted by our ideas of what we think we know about ourselves. And really the debate of whether God exists or doesn't exist, and this strong desire to know something. So just to start off by just saying, you know what, friends, it's a human condition to know. And yet here we are in the early stages of our 12 steps. It talks about belief. And the difference is between believing and knowing is as different as day or night. See, we want to know something, and if you think about it, the reason why we want to know something is because we want to be able to manage it. In other words, we want to control the situation. We want to be able to name it, to understand it, so intellectually we get it. And yet, in this dimension of mystery, this dimension of a spiritual realm exists that we would be much better off bringing our beliefs or even our lack of beliefs into this environment. So one of the first things I had to deal with is trying to put aside this desire to know. Because what I was trying to do, I was trying to chunk these things down to my understanding. And what I did inadvertently was create not a higher power, but a mirrored power to who I was and what I knew and what I didn't know. What I left on the table is this idea of human dignity, about what I call the sacred identity. The sacred identity is the true human potential that each of us carry. And I can share with you a little bit how I arrived there, because I think it's important to begin to understand what prevents me from seeing the sacred identity. You see, because of my desire to know things, I want to be able to label things. I want to be able to label things about myself. And I concluded many things about myself, like I am self-centered, I am an alcoholic, I am angry, I am. All of which I had evidence for, by the way. But what I didn't realize was I was deteriorating my personal identity. You see, I have a disease or a disorder called alcoholism. I am not that disease. I have been self-centered, although I am not self-centered. I have been angry, but I'm not angry. And why am I making this distinction? This distinction is so critically important because it brings us to this idea that I can be restored to something. If I believe I am those things, there's nothing for me to be restored. It's like asking a cat to bark. But you see, what I've done is learn things to survive. to get my needs met. So I have certain patterns, certain skill set, so that I could get my needs met. Those things aren't me. There's something, a divine spark in each of us that often gets overlooked. And we get distracted coming to Alcoholics Anonymous at times because we try to put so much time and effort in our defects of character, our shortcomings, and so on. Because we believe, and I think rightfully so, that as we come to know ourselves better, we can actually do something or transcend those ideas. So the intention is good. However, what occurs is that when I use that too often and I define myself in those terms, I then reduce myself to defects of character, to a disorder, and so on. So what I want to share with you is that we are far greater than that. There's more to us than our defects of character. There's more to us than our disorders. There's more to us than our learned experiences. So what do we do? You know, all of these things are necessary, by the way. We want to be able to get into step forward and learn more about ourselves and so on. You know, these things are very good ideas and practical ideas for us to find freedom. But again, we got to be careful how we define ourselves. You see, each of us, in our own way, because of the restlessness, irritability, and discontent we have with our lives and who we think we are, have reduced ourselves to something that's transactional. So I want to open up this doorway with you and enter in this fourth dimension of a spiritual boundless area. And we do that by, first of all, saying to ourselves, I really don't know as much as I think I know. That I am involved right now in an area of mystery. And I want to be able to look at myself like a child would, a 5-year-old child looking at the rainbow for the first time. There's awe in living, not in conclusions or in judgment, but just to experience the breath that I'm taking in this moment, my attention where I'm paying attention to, so that I can experience what's there for me to experience. So what we want to be able to do is to begin to believe something here. We're trying to believe that there is an energy, a power, a source, a cause that each of us have. Now, we can debate it, which prolongs the agony, by the way. Is there a God? Is there not a God? I don't know if I believe it. I want to know more about it. And what we're doing is creating this idea that we have to delay our total recovery. But friends, I can assure you, and I'm going to prove to you in a moment, that God does exist in some form. I have a particular faith that I follow. It's, to me, in this discussion, it's unimportant. What's important is I'm able to touch something for myself that I can identify with and relate to. So I would like each of us, if you would, just put your hand on your heart for a moment. Just put it there. And I want you to go internal for a moment. And what I mean by going internal is really paying attention to the experience that you're having. And in the very fact that you are putting your hand on your heart, you begin to see that there's a couple of ways of living. One is in your head and the other one's on your heart. In your heart, the body does not lie. The body does no capability of deleting or any information at all. It is a true sense of an experience that we're about to have. And what I'd like you to do is to think about for a moment that as you're breathing, inhaling and exhaling deeply, you begin to sense something moving within you. Now, this could be energy. It could be a feeling of excitement. It could be something beautiful. But as you're beginning to feel your heart, the area in which we live, we begin to recognize that there's something divine happening. That we are not just people placed in this order, this life accidentally. That we have not recovered just because it was in our best interest, that there is purpose here. And that we're being caused by something far greater than we could ever appreciate or even understand. But we want to enter into this experience paying attention to the vibrancy of living life. Now, friends, you may be feeling these things in this moment. And the reason why you're feeling these things in this moment is because it is always there with you. It's not because you're good or you deserve it or because you've gone to so many months or years of experience, it has come to you. We can have this moment right now, in this moment, defects and all, and allow this spirit within us to move us in a way that empowers us, that directs us and guides us in life. So friends, as we're just experiencing this for a moment, I just draw back and I just want you to appreciate the idea that God does exist in some form. There is a divinity in each of us. And not only is it in each of us, but it's also in others. It's also everything around us, on top of us and underneath us and behind us. There's nothing moves in this universe without this energy. And as we're beginning to see that, we begin to feel empowered. We begin to sense there is potential here, that we are good people, that we have this purpose and meaning to live life and live it productively, effectively, and on purpose. See, this is what it means when we talk about this idea that we're power greater than ourselves, that are causing us to live life fully and to thrive and to flourish in what we do every day. Okay, that's so good. All right, so this is what it means. So as you experience this in the moment, you begin to see the potential that's there in front of you today, at this moment. This is what I want you to see. I don't want you to see it in a further distance or to have to learn more, or you had to try harder, or you have to go to more meetings. All of those things are good things, by the way, but you don't need to have that happen. You can experience this higher power right here, right now, and in this moment. So this helps us open up this boundless place, this a place where there are no boundaries, that we begin to sense, therefore, far greater than our disorder, that we're far greater than our defects of character, that we were somebody before this addiction took place. And in many of us, what happens, we identify so much with our addiction, we see ourselves only as broken, as weak, as not good enough, not loving enough. And we're missing what's really there. And that is this full potential of us as a human being. So what does this all mean? Is it possible that we can live life this way? And here's the instructions on how to go about doing it. See, we have to come to believe. We have to allow our belief to happen. And how we do that is through exercises like we just did, by noticing and acknowledging that there is a spirit within us that exists. And that this is a relationship that we have. It is not a transaction that we're asking for. In other words, sometimes we reduce God or our higher power as an entity to ask things for. If you give me this, I'll do that. It's a transaction. I'm asking you to go deeper here with me this afternoon. I'm asking you to become in a love relationship with this entity because it wants nothing but good for you. It wants to be able to provide and cause you to become the purpose that you're always meant to be. That's possible. And if you think about, many of us drank or became addicts because we were trying to find comfort in ease. And yet it's right in front of us that we can do this naturally, that we can rely on something that is consistent, that is all powerful, that will move us in the direction we need to move in. So we come to believe that we're going to be restored. Restored to what? Restored to wholeness. Long before we ever had a drink, long before we ever learned poor behaviors or judgments about ourselves, other people. We were whole. We were complete as a child. And you can imagine going back to probably the time when you don't remember, when you're a child, when you're tired, you cried, when you're hungry, you cried, when someone tickled you, you laughed. You had no judgment, you just lived life. And this is what we want to be able to have in our adult life, is to return to this idea of wholeness. That we do have purpose, friends. This is not a mistake. It's not a mistake that you're here this morning. It's not a mistake that you're in recovery. It's not a mistake that you have curiosity about how to live life. But we have to let go of these preconditioned ideas that we have about ourselves. Now, we have to be responsible for those things, by the way. I'm not suggesting we're not responsible for those things. What I'm suggesting to you, we no longer want to be defined by those things. We want to be able to see in ourselves what areas that we need improvement, of course, and rely on this power to cause us to do something about them or not. So it's not about creating a life that we think is perfect. It's about allowing this energy, this God, this entity, this source of power to come in our life and help direct us. See, this is what it means to have worthiness, that we feel worthy of living life, that we begin to see ourselves for who we are totally rather than the dark side of who we are. Yes, each of us have defects of character. None of us are perfect. There isn't a human being on earth living today or in the past that was perfect. But we understand that condition, that in our imperfection, we can see perfection. And all we have to do is lean into this, by the way. We don't have to, we have to allow it to occur. Allow it in a sense that this energy is coming through us, in us, and around us. And all we have to do is say yes to it. This energy, I like to think of it as a wind. Have you ever heard me speak before? You hear me talking about this idea that this energy is causing us, the first cause of the universe is causing us to move in a particular direction. So I am not on my own powerful enough through my self-will to make the kinds of changes and the transformation that happens in Alcoholics Anonymous. On my own, I don't have that ability. But I can tap into the energy that will provide that power and move me in a direction that I need to be moving in. One that complements who I am on purpose, one that really taps into my potential, that I can actually achieve living life fully and completely. So where do we start? How do we start this transit? Because many of us come here self-determined and relying completely on what we think we know or what we can learn. We live in our heads. How do we start living in our hearts? Well, first, we want to acknowledge that there is something that exists. We don't have to know it. We don't have to name it. We don't have to, just to acknowledge that it exists. And acknowledging that it exists in us. These are very, very good beginning steps. That we are no longer living this life alone. That there's something wonderful and available to us. And start to examine our behaviors and our ways of doing things with that alliance, with that power. So as I started to say, this wind on my back, that's how I perceive this energy, that God is moving me. And I trust that God is moving me in a particular direction. I trust that this conversation is being led by the spirit within me rather than the ego to look good. I trust that I'm accessing these ideas from a place that maybe I know very little about, but I sense it exists. So as I come to Alcoholics Anonymous, burdened with the heaviness of addiction, predetermined who I thought I was, made conclusions and judgments about myself that I'm not good enough, that if only I could change or it could be some other way. I then begin to realize this is not my game. My game is all about allowing. It's all about surrendering. It's about letting go rather than trying to make things happen. These are powerful spiritual ideas to begin with, friends. Rather than engaging in negative thinking or criticism of others, or worried about the circumstances that face each and every one of us, we learn to accept those things. We learn to accept them and take responsibility in how we're going to respond to them through this energy that is loving and kind, as compassionate and gentle, rather. This energy that exists, that transforms lives. So, friends, this is what's in front of us. And if we don't, if we still, I love this prayer, by the way. The prayer is scripturally based, and I hope you don't mind me saying it. But it was about a man talking to Jesus, and he asked him to heal his daughter. And Jesus says, sure, show me the way to your home. And he said, I'm not worthy that you should come to my home. And Jesus responded by saying, listen, your faith has healed your daughter. Go in peace. Your belief has healed your daughter. And the man responded in this prayer, and I love this prayer. I use it every day. Lord, I believe, but help my unbelief. See, this is what it means to enter into this chamber, this sacred place, that we don't have to be perfect in any way, shape, or form. We can walk into this and be healed. So, as we enter and practice this idea, we're open to this energy actually exists. Now, the temptation is, as I say, is to try to know what's happening. When we're in the mystery of living, we become very uncomfortable. We become afraid. And although we know that we really can't control anything, including our next breath, we still desire to remain in control. And when we're giving up that control, this perceived control, by the way, we feel extremely fearful. But friends, we have not in control of too much. The only thing we can control is our reactions to what is presented to us. Now imagine you're responding with the energy in which I'm describing to you. So it really doesn't matter what occurs, that you're able to have confidence that you're able to move through it. And like many of us, what we learned in life is that we can't prevent pain from happening. Each of us come here with disappointments, reverses, perhaps losses of relationships, financial reverses, illness, maybe death. Each of us face these kinds of things every day. And yet, with this alliance that we have, we're confident in knowing that we can get through it. That when we come out the other side of this grief, of this loss, we will be better for it. Not that this God puts it in our way, it's just the natural order of what happens. But we can have the silent confidence that this will not ruin my life. That I can, in those moments, move through that with dignity and a sense of worthiness and self-esteem in which I truly desire. See, the things that I think we were looking for in alcohol or in other drugs was this sense of being okay with life, this congruence, if you like. And when I didn't feel that, I reached out for these artificial ways of making myself feel better, only to find out it was only temporary. What we discover in the 12 steps is that I can feel that way permanently by learning and teaching myself to let go, to accept, and to surrender what's around me. This is what's in front of us, friends. This is what's here for us. That nothing in life can stop us from flourishing, only ourselves. How we define, what we notice, what we engage with, what we keep telling ourselves in negative affirmations that distract us from this power. And when you look at it from a distance and observe it, it doesn't make any sense to debate it any longer. Try to determine if it's real or not. You know, we believe in all kinds of things that isn't real. We just believe them. But when it comes to something like this power, we are, or many of us are hesitant. And I liken it to this, friends. I liken it to this, I'm drowning in the ocean, right? And somebody from the ship is throwing me a life preserver. And you know what I'm doing with that life preserver? I'm throwing it back, saying I don't like the color. I'm not sure this will work. Here, take the life preserver. I'd rather risk drowning than to receive the life preserver as it is and to use it to the best of my ability so that I can stay safe, so I can live. This is what happens when we debate these issues, when we talk about what we don't believe. Now, is it possible to stay sober and not believe anything other than yourself? Yeah, I guess you can. I don't see any harm of it if that works for you. But I can tell you this, living life with this alliance of this power, this energy, life becomes much more colorful, much more enjoyable, much more relief I have in being in action to achieve the things that's in my heart to achieve. See, this is what it means to get started in step 2. Step 2 is the willingness to believe something beyond what we can possibly know, to accept that there is a spiritual world, a fourth dimension, if you like, that exists that we don't know anything about, and to step in the mystery and allow this experience to take hold, like putting your hand on your heart and recognizing that each breath that we take is sacred, that we could be grateful for each breath that we take, and that we start developing a relationship with this power rather than reducing it to a transaction. And I like to think of it as a love relationship. And how does one start a love relationship? A great place to start is being grateful. Thank you for this life that you've given me, rather than saying, oh, I hate my life. Thank you for everything that's been given to me, rather than saying I want more. Thank you for the energy and the enthusiasm and the interest I have in recovery so that I can help others recover. Thank you. And allow that feeling, that sense of heart space to dwell, to come up within us. And so that we can actually feel the gratitude rather than listing the gratitude, which is a completely mental exercise. To relive the experience of gratefulness is the beginning of a love relationship with this entity. So however you define this entity, acknowledge that you'll never know the full extent of it. Because if you think you know God, this isn't God. It is something else. It's something that we've created. It's the mirror of our ego. And we oftentimes, quite accidentally, by the way, we create this because we're trying to learn and know what this actually is. So let's throw that out the window and be open to the human possibilities that exist. And as we travel further in this idea, what we begin to see is that we can make a decision to align ourselves with this God. To make a decision simply means, and it's an interesting word, like you're going to be, we use words like decision or will. What do we mean by those things? And the word to decide is defined in the family words of decide, of the side family, CIDE family, as to kill off any other options. In other words, I am going to be so focused on turning my will and my life over the care of God that there are no other options for me. Oh, I may take my will back, and I may not even be aware of it when I do take my will back. But the moment I notice it, because I made a decision, I'm going to return my will and my life over the care of God. So what does that mean? What does it mean to turn your will over? It's a word we use so often. Well, what it means simply is this, that I'm willing to stop trying to cause this transformation in me and turn this will over to God's will that's causing me to move forward in life. So I'm trading in the temporary self-will. There's nothing wrong with self-will, by the way. It's a human condition, and we need to exercise it when we can use it, but we can't employ it where it doesn't work. So we're trading that self-will, that limited power that we have, into a more permanent power of God. We have decided by killing off any other options that I'm going to turn my will or cause over to this entity. And that I'm going to be in its care. Now, how do I know when that occurs? And I'll tell you exactly how we can know how it occurs, is when we know that all is well, that we're not worried anymore, that fear doesn't determine our behaviors or drive our behaviors, that we're okay, and we will remain okay. See, these are the clues in me knowing and understanding that I have actually turned my will and my life over to the care of this entity. This takes, my friends, it takes deliberateness. It takes this idea that I need to allow this to happen. And as I go through the program, what I come to learn is that, you know what, I have to be responsible for my mistakes and my errors and judgment and my self-centeredness. And that's the beauty of doing this. We finally become responsible for who we are, and we observe our patterns. That we have patterns. The patterns are not us. To keep separate from the fact that this is not who I am. Who I am is a sacred identity. Being prepared to be restored to wholeness. In order to do that, I need to have an understanding, at best an estimate, of what prevents me from achieving that. And that's where the steps 4 comes into play. And then what I want to share with you, friends, is the steps 6 and 7 is this all about acceptance of those conditions. I'm no longer self-absorbed in trying to fix them. Because me being self-absorbed means I'm being distracted from this power that I'm sharing with you. And that I could spend, and I did spend a lot of years trying to fix myself. The intention was good, but what I left in the background was the power that had the power to be able to do something about it. I had to do it myself. I wanted to create a life that I wanted to create. I wasn't open to what maybe God wanted me to be. I can remember when I was introduced to this idea many, many years ago, one of the first thoughts I felt, what if God asked me to go on a mountain and become a recluse, sandals and a beard and so on with a stick in my hand? I don't want to do that. You see, that's what welled up in me, the fear of the unknown. And today, I'm okay if that were the case. Today, as I investigate what I'm going to be doing today, I do so with the alliance with this power. I'm open and adaptable enough today that I'm willing to move in the direction I believe that I'm being moved into. So steps 6 and 7 are really about acceptance rather than fixing. It is allowing God to do God's work and for me to do my work. Now, friends, this happens, by the way, through experiential prayer. I don't mean prayer by reciting the words, which often we do. We say prayers or we read prayers. No, what we want to do is experience prayer. We want to be able to actually have a sense that it's moving in us. So with me, I just want you to pray with me. And what I want you to do here is actually experience that this is actually happening as we pray these beautiful words. So I don't want you to do it out of rote or of memory, or that you're thinking about something else as we do this activity. I want you to enter a sacred place in your heart, a place where divinity exists in you. And I want you to express this in all the heartfelt ways that you possibly can in this moment. Knowing maybe you're not going to be very good at it yet, or maybe you're going to be very good at it, but to know that as practice, you're going to be able to have your life transformed, not by your effort or by design, but by this energy that we've been talking about so far today. So just close your eyes if you would, and allow yourself to imagine this is actually taking place. You may put your hand on your heart, again, to remind you to get out of your head and get into your heart space. And as we lift our hearts and minds to this entity, this God, pray with me and see this actually happening in your life. God, I offer myself to thee to build with me and to do with me as thou wilt. Relieve me of the bondage of self, that I may better do thy will. Take away my difficulties, that victory over them may bear witness to those that would help of thy power, thy love, and thy way of life. May I do thy will always. And as we conclude the prayer, oftentimes we say amen. Amen is a Hebrew word which means so be it. That we come to believe that this is actually occurring. So be it. Amen. Thank you would be the next thing that we would say. Because as we pray these words, they are actually occurring. And we put to the end of the prayer, amen, so be it. And because we've been gifted by this experience, it is natural for us to say thank you and be grateful for the hallowed and sacred experience that we just had. You see, you get a sense of the dignity we have as a human being. We get a sense of this relationship, this love relationship between this entity and ourselves. We get a sense that there's something far greater and deeper than we can possibly imagine that's occurring here. And all we have to do is to allow and to surrender and to accept. Stop fighting the fight. Stop thinking it's your effort that's going to cause these things. The success of it isn't in the effort that you're giving it. The success of it is the surrendering of it. is allowing. Be open to this is actually occurring, that God does exist, that God is in this love relationship with us, and we're in a love relationship with Him, which can move mountains for us. With this rejuvenation and this newness that we have towards this relationship, we begin to see who we actually are. And I love the word, the dignity of the human being. See, we are not our disease or our disorder, friends. We are not our defects of character. We are much bigger than that. So no matter where you are this morning, think of this as the seed and a tree. Think of a seed being planted in the ground. At first glance, it's just a small, insignificant object. Yet within it lies potential of the mighty tree, providing shade, shelter, and nourishment. Similarly, within us, each of us is a potential for greatness and hidden beneath the surface. Despite rocky soil or harsh weather, the seed can grow into something magnificent. Our divine spark is that seed, and our potential is the tree. Let's have a visualization together, friends. Close your eyes if you would. Let us close our eyes for the moment. Picture a seed in your mind. This seed represents your sacred identity. Imagine planting this seed in fertile soil, nurturing it with care and love. See it sprouting, growing, and eventually becoming a towering tree. Feel the strength and stability of this tree, knowing that all started from a tiny, seemingly insignificant seed. Now open your eyes and remember that this potential lies within you. You know, something we've learned in AA, we talked a lot about, is letting go. And I'm sure every one of us have experienced letting go. But beyond our self-awareness, there are many things that we retain and engage in. So this letting go is a deliberate practice of becoming more self-aware of when we're entering in a disempowering thought or feeling. And we can practice letting go so that we can remain connected to this power. Now, if we engage in negative thinking or defining ourselves negatively, we're being disengaged from this power. We want to be available. So we're going to focus on the readiness of letting go of our defects and ask for the divine help to remove them. This is what it means in steps 6 and 7, is the willingness to be able to let go of these things. Don't be preoccupied with your defects of character. And let me remind you, yes, we want to be responsible for them, but we don't want to be defined by them. You know, I often talk to a lot of people in recovery. I mean, a lot of people in the work I do. And oftentimes, very quickly, we get to a place where people tell me what's wrong with them. And they can articulate it beautifully. They can give me examples. They know the nuances of what's the matter with them. And they can repeat them in such detail, it's amazing. I always ask the same thing from them. I said, well, what's good about you? And their hesitation occurs. Then they give me some general statement, knowing that they need to answer the question, yet they don't have the details available to them as they do with their defects of character. So we become preoccupied with these things. And we want to be able to be free of those things, not be defined by those things. And we want to remain connected through the experiences that we've just experienced here with this power, because this is the true way of having them be transcended. So, remind us that our weaknesses will not define us, but rather they are opportunities for growth. And we all know about the myth of the phoenix, the bird that rises from its own ashes, which is a great metaphor for recovered addicts. Yeah, we're in ashes. We have been in ashes. Our life had been a mess, and maybe it still is. Maybe we just don't know how to live or where to go about it, and we're so confused. Each of us have been in that position. So in this respect, we're like that bird, the phoenix, rising from its own ashes. The phoenix symbolizes rebirth and transformation. It teaches us that even after facing destruction, we have the power to rise again, renewed and stronger. Our defects of characters and past mistakes are ashes from which we can emerge, reborn and revitalized. So friends, let's act in another visualization here. Close your eyes once more, hand on your heart. Picture yourself as that phoenix standing amidst the ashes of your past. Feel the warmth and the power as you rise. Spreading your wings wide. Imagine soaring high above, free from the constraints and limits of your past. These visualizations help you connect with your higher power. See, we have an inner sense called constructive imagination. We knew it as children, by the way. We could take a doll or a little toy soldier, whatever we had to play with, and make it a life, make it real. We could just take a new person that we met and make them our best friend ever. This is what it means to have a constructive imagination, which we don't lose as we grow up, but we may not utilize it. Use your constructive imagination to make this a reality for you. So just imagine yourself soaring, free from the constraints and the limits of your past. Carry this image around with you as a reminder of your ability to transform and rise above any challenges through the help of this energy. Okay. Friends, today I hope you would stop the debate whether God exists or not as an intellectual exercise. Whether I cannot prove that God is real or not, but I choose to believe in it. Like the wind, I can't see it or where it starts. I see evidence of it. So you can't see the wind, but you can see the trees, the leaves in the trees blowing. Therefore, you know that the wind is blowing because I see evidence. And like the spirit of the universe, I can see evidence. How else can you explain how you have recovered? A quick story. I was talking to a lady in Western United States. And I was talking about this subject of God existing, causing, and so on. And she gets on after the meeting and asks me the question, I don't believe that God exists in me. And I said to her, what if I could prove it to you? And I could see her, I couldn't see her whole body front, but what I could imagine her doing is having her hands on her hip and saying, yeah, well, show me. I don't know if any of you or ever had that posture or not. Yeah, go ahead and show me. And I said, I knew a little bit about her as she shared her story with me, and she grew up in a completely dysfunctional and attic home. And that she left her house at a young age of 13 years old. There was not only addiction in that family home, but there was a suicide attempt and so on. And she actually left at that young age and traveled to a different city, where she found, of course, all kinds of hardship because she didn't have the skills to live life. They were never taught to her. Then she started telling me and sharing with me about her two daughters. She's an older lady now, two growing daughters. And you can just hear the tone in her voice has shifted of warmth and love that she has for these two growing daughters. And I said to her, I can prove to you that God exists. She said, well, go ahead. I said, well, and I just repeated about her growing up. And she had no love in that family home. She said, no, I didn't. It was all about survival. So you had no love in the family home, so you weren't conditioned for love. Is that right? And she said, yeah. How is it that love showed up with your daughters? Naturally. How did you know to love? And just with these few questions, she was taken back and she said, oh my God. That she found something within her that she didn't recognize was divine until the moment that her and I had this conversation. See, there's the evidence. How can we find a solution in recovery where we tried so often and it never worked? Then it just showed up. Is that evidence for you? It's evidence for me. Friends, I hope this was of value to you. I hope you're taking away some exercises to practice until next month. I hope that you allow yourself to be open to the possibility that the divine exists in you and that you have a sacred identity, which we'll be covering in other sessions as we go through this workshop together. I'll pass this meeting back to our chair lady, Sky.